Good morning, everyone. I will now call to order the August 11, 2022 Clackamas County Board of Commissioners business meeting. Administrator Gary Schmidt, would you please call the roll?
Yes, Chair Smith. First, our staff support today, County Counsel Stephen Madcore, Clerk to the Board Tony Mayernick. Roll call, Commissioner Schull.
Here.
Commissioner Savas.
Present.
Commissioner Fisher. Here. Commissioner Schrader is going to join online, but she's not online yet. We'll let you know as soon as she is. Chair Smith.
Here. Thank you. I will now lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good morning, everyone. We are holding this meeting in person and virtually. If you have joined us via Zoom for this meeting and are interested in providing public comment, we will prompt you regarding how to do that when the time is right. General public comment will be taken at the usual allotted time. I would like to remind all participants, including staff, all elected officials, and members of the public that Robert's Rules of Order will be enforced in this business meeting. We welcome your opinions and look forward to your polite participation. Gary, can you introduce the first item, please?
Yes, Chair Smith. So first, Commissioner Schrader has joined. Are you there, Commissioner Schrader?
Yes, I am, Gary.
Very good. Thank you. We have two presentations to start. The first presentation is recognition of the 2022 Clackamas County Spirit of Excellence Award recipients. These are employees. Jackie Nursky from Human Resources will give a quick presentation, and then commissioners will ask you all to come forward and then give their certificates to each employee. But Jackie, please come forward.
Welcome.
Thank you so much. Welcome to the Spirit of Excellence Awards presentation. This is the 10th year the A-Team has collaborated with HR to bring you these awards. In the past year, county employees submitted over 100 Spirit Award nominations to recognize excellence in their coworkers. Leadership committee members selected 10 of these Spirit nominations to receive the Spirit of Excellence Awards. The Spirit of Excellence Award honors those that embody our county core values of service, professionalism, integrity, respect, individual accountability, and trust. This award presentation is held to honor and thank the nominees that have exemplified Clackamas County's core values by their dedicated, energetic, and caring service to our citizens. The employees receiving this award are valued for their ability to represent Clackamas County well inside and outside of our community. If we could have the commissioners come down, we will then read the name and department of the recipient. When you hear your name called, please make your way up to the front where you receive your award certificate and meet the commissioners. Then please line up in front of the dais. Once all the recipients are called up front, we'll take a quick picture. Yay.
Thank you very much. I'm very pleased that the county employees are in attendance today to receive your Spirit Awards. First person up is Baipan Lakampal. Please come forward from the county clerk's office. And you can just stay with us and we'll have a picture when everybody comes up. Thank you. From Transportation and Development, Claudia Razzo. Yes. From Health, Housing, and Human Services, Scott Vandekoevering. Other Spirit Award recipients that may or may not be in attendance today, I believe Eric Fine from Transportation and Development is here. Also, Natalie Lohr from Health, Housing, and Human Services. Jenny Risatelli from Health, Housing, and Human Services. Elise Thompson from Health, Housing, and Human Services. Doug McLean, Transportation and Development. Janice Nielsen, County Administration. And last but not least, certainly, Alan Redborn, Technology Services. So, do we want a picture?
Yes.
Okay, who's doing that today? There we
PTA
go.
is here to take your guys' picture.
Get close together.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that was rather painless. Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. This year, we placed all the submissions of the Spirit of Excellence Awards on the internet webpage for the A-Team. A special thank you goes out to all of our Spirit of Excellence Award winners from your county HR and A-Team for your dedication to Clackamas County. We also want to recognize and thank those that take the time to submit a nomination, as we would not be able to recognize these individuals without your initiative. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Hey, Gary, what's next?
All right, thank you. And the next presentation is recognition of support for the commissioning of the USS Oregon by VFW Post 1324. Jeff Jorgensen, who's our county's facilities director and a member of the VFW Post, will be the main presenter along with others. So Jeff and team, please come forward.
Thank you, and if our recipient awardees want to leave, you won't be judged harshly for not maintaining the rest of the business meeting. Thanks a lot. Go ahead, Jeff.
Good morning, Chair Smith, Commissioners, Administrator Schmidt. Appreciate the time to come and just acknowledge the support that the county has given to the USS Oregon, SSN 793. On Saturday, May 28th, the ship was commissioned in Groton, Connecticut, and Mr. Steve Daniels and myself were back there at the commissioning. So the officers, the captain, the officers, and men of the ship appreciate it. Everybody thinks that the Navy supports and does all this stuff. The commissionings are supported by private donations. So we appreciate the donations that the county had given, and we have some plaques and some pins and coins to go ahead and give to each of the commissioners.
How would you like to do that,
Come on back
Gary?
down, commissioners, please.
Come on down.
Come on down.
And Scott, you're still here. Do you mind taking photos, please, Scott?
Go ahead and show that this is the plaque from the USS Oregon that we're giving to everybody for the commissioning on the 28th of May, 2022.
Just a second, Jeff. We need a mic for you.
Yeah, this is the plaque that we're giving to each of the commissioners. It's got the Oregon seal, again, SSN 793. But the commissioning we had on Saturday, May 28th. And so we're going to have the plaque, commissioning coin, and it has some pins. So appreciate that. So I'll go ahead and give it. Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate it. I'm going to go ahead and do that. You're going to be last.
Thank you.
We also have one for Commissioner Schrader. Commissioner Savis, thank you very much. Appreciate that. And final one is to Chair Smith.
Thank you very
Appreciate it.
much.
Thank you very much.
We were glad to participate.
Appreciate it. And
Unwrap your certificates, and then we'll have a photo with all of you together with your plaques.
one of these, we just have one of these, but it's a commissioning, basically the booklet that was presented, so we're going to go ahead and just, you can put it wherever you want it. But,
Keep it in the front office, how's that? Thank you very much, Jeff.
thank you. Have a good day.
Yes, Commissioner Schrager, yes.
So you can take it home.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the recognition and the good job of the USS Navy and naming one of their modern nuclear submarines after the great state of Oregon. I'm very happy about that. Gary, what's next?
Next is a public hearing, Commissioners. It is a second reading of an ordinance amending Clackamas County Code, Chapter 6.03, emergency regulations and declaring an emergency. Stephen Madcore, County Council, will give a quick presentation.
Thank you, Gary. Morning, Commissioners. As Gary mentioned, we're here for a second reading of a code change to Chapter 6.03, Emergency Regulations. The board had its first reading on July 7th. We met earlier this week on Tuesday where we talked about additional changes to that. There was actually a reduction in proposed changes. And then since that time, Commissioner Fisher has proposed some additional language and tweaks of sorts to it, of which we included, and I will walk you through those. And so we have it Exhibit A, and we circulated it to the board previously, and it's posted on the county's website as well. So first off, what we're doing, or what the board is considering, is expanding the definition of emergency. We currently have this in code. It's based on Chapter 401 of state law. This has been in county code since 2000. New language is this. Under definition of emergency, you are considering adding malfeasance in office or willful or wanton neglect of duty of a county public official. Those terms are legal terms of art, and they are found in the Oregon Tort Claims Act, and they're well regarded in the law as being definable terms of official misconduct. What was added was on Tuesday was failure to meet statutory or regulatory requirements. That's new language that Commissioner Fisher proposed and seemed to have support of the board. So that is expanding the definition of emergency. The other change that is before the board today for a second reading is going to be found in 040, and it says, nothing in this chapter is intended to divest any county official of their statutory duties. The next change that the board is considering is an 060H, and it says, it used to say just redirect funds, and now it says redirect funds and county staff for emergency use to take measures to abate the emergency. And later, under I, it adds, and to avoid financial loss. That section in total reads, other such measures as are found to be immediately necessary for the protection of life and or property, adding, and to avoid financial loss. We also have a new section, which is 100. It's a severability clause. It's found in codes throughout, and it basically says if there's a challenge to this code, and these portions are found to be unconstitutional, unreasonable, exceeding the board's authority, then the court would strike those, but not the whole remainder of the ordinance itself. So the existing ordinance as it exists today would stand, and the new provisions that were found unreasonable would fall. And I'm here to answer any questions the board may have in this regard.
Commissioners. Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, just for a point of order as it relates to the hearing itself, knowing we had quite a bit of discussion on Tuesday in a non-hearing setting, how is that incorporated into the actual hearing process?
I'm sorry, Commissioner, one more time.
Said, we're here today in the second hearing of this, correct?
Correct.
Correct. So how does the comments and substance of what was discussed on Tuesday, how's that incorporated into the record for the hearing? Should it not be really under the hearing setting, or how's that folded into the record?
That was all under a policy session, so that's all recorded, that's all memorialized, and the comments that were made, changes to the code, are incorporated into this version that you have in front of you today.
Yeah, but there's a lot of content that was discussed that's not incorporated in the document itself.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, but this is a public hearing, it's going to be open for public comment, and so the law requires for adoption of a county ordinance is 2 public hearings 13 days apart, and we're well beyond the 13 days on this one.
Okay, I just want to share that since we've been discussing this, and especially the last 48 hours or so, I've gotten a lot of feedback, and it really kind of shined a light on 6.03, even as it sits today, minus the changes. And yeah, it was. Yeah, and it just brought to my attention that, that there's potentially some issues with which I kind of tend to agree with some folks that maybe in and of itself that I'd never recognized before, but I just want to put it on the record that I think I have some challenges maybe with the existing code as it sits. And so I might be bringing those up today in our discussion, only because, again, I just learned of these and it's kind of shined a light on some of the stuff. So, Mr. Madcore, 4.01, emergency powers are derived out of 4.01, which is under the premise of a natural disaster or something like that. In your opinion, this is expanding it beyond what the intent of 4.01 is? Yes, no?
Can't really speak to the intent of what the legislature had of adopting 401, but 401 is a very broad definition of emergency, kind of actually broader beyond what the county has itself. But no doubt, the inclusion of the malfeasance in office and willful conduct of a public official, that is in addition language. That language is not found in state law.
Right.
Under the emergency section. It's found in the Oregon Tort Claims Act, but not in official misconduct, but it's not found under emergency, under 401.
Right. And without putting words in your mouth, I appreciate what you said earlier. This is an expansion, really, of those powers, what we're doing here today.
Of the definition, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Shaw.
Good morning, Mr. Madcore. I have a question related to Commissioner Savas's question. In paragraph 6.03.020, that's the definition of the emergency. You just talked about the addition of that language. Later on in that same paragraph, it says, upon that declaration of emergency, the chair of the board is empowered to assume centralized control of and have authority over all departments, divisions, and offices of Clackamas County in order to implement the provisions of this chapter. Now, my question, Mr. Madcore, is when it says, and have authority over, does that mean operational authority, or does it mean administrative authority, or does it mean coordinating authority?
Hard to tell what the parameters are of that exact language. It basically says, so in the event of an emergency, power is consolidated with the board, specifically with the chair. What the, in operation, what exactly that means, we haven't tested that yet. I would like to think it means cooperative authority, but we haven't been faced with a situation which presented itself where a chair went in and started to do granular, boots on the ground type of authority.
Yes. Well, my concern is that if this is adopted and we do have the declaration about an emergency, and it could be next month or it could be years from now, and that particular commission considered that authority to be operational authority over all the departments and divisions and offices in the county, that would be a huge, huge power. given to the Board of Commissioners.
I would agree with you on that. I would say that the code also vests direct authority to control departments with the county administrator, and that's what the current code provides, so that's why I would suggest that it be more cooperative than anything else. But I will also point out to you that that is the language that currently exists and has been there since 2000. We haven't necessarily struggled with that scenario that you're presenting yet, but that was what Commissioner Savas was alluding to earlier, was that that language does vest it with the chair. But mind you, the emergency declaration can only take place if the chair can declare an emergency on his or her own, but it must be ratified by a quorum of the board at the earliest possible opportunity. And if the board did not agree with the terms or the extent of the emergency or the measures, then they would repeal the emergency declaration. That's how that functions.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to speak to this now. This county has experienced 3 emergencies in a very short amount of time within 1 year. First, it was the pandemic, which I was not chair then. That was declared by the chair, correct? And ratified by the board.
Correct, I believe so.
And then we had the firestorms, which was declared by the chair and
I think the first
ratified.
pandemic one, it might have been declared by the full board.
Could have been the full
Yeah.
board. And then we had the firestorm, which was an extreme emergency by the chair and then later ratified by the board. And then when I became chair in February, we had the ice storm. And how I declared that emergency was our disaster management chief at the time, Nancy Bush, called, and Gary Schmidt were on the phone, said, this is very bad, we need to go to an emergency situation. I then declared an emergency based upon advice of others in county, and that's how I will proceed on declaring any emergency, and God help us all that we never have to go down that road again. And that is certainly my intent, and I think any chair that comes in, the responsibility is huge. In that, this board nor any chair really wants to own an emergency. Correct? I don't want to own emergencies. I don't want anything to happen that we have to come in and take over the operations, and this all stemmed out of the election situation we had on the May 17 primary election, whereas you could argue, Stephen Magcor, that in order to ensure operations, in order to ensure that the ballots were counted in a timely manner, that the county administrator went in and offered 600 employees to ensure that those operations were met and the timelines were met according to what the Secretary of State says and Oregon revised statutes say regarding deadlines for elections. So we live under very, very many complicated rules and law. And I do believe, as the administrative authority of Clackamas County, that we should be allowed to make sure and ensure the very successful operations of not only the Elections Department, the Treasury, Assessment and Taxation, and the Sheriff's Office. And I would have to say the Sheriff's Office has performed miraculous work in this county during our times of emergency. And this is not intended to take away powers from any elected official. And I believe, Stephen Magcor, we have gone back and forth on language, and you have put language in here, and I'm going to repeat it in case some folks online didn't hear that, and that is under 6.03.04, or declaration of an emergency. Nothing in this chapter is intended to divest any county official of their statutory duties. And that is what we will operate under. Okay, so I have finished that. Commissioner Fisher and then Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, so I really appreciate this conversation about the areas that Commissioner Scholl and Commissioner Savas have brought up about currently that the current code allows the chair of the board is empowered to assume centralized control of and have the authority over all departments, divisions, and offices of Clackamas County. We talked about it at our last hearing. What would it be like? Well, if the chair had the power to delegate the centralized operations. And then, of course, the board would ratify. And Stephen Madcore, you had stated that why would we give up the power that we have as an elected body? And that was very persuasive to me, and you advised against that. So with this conversation, the next question I have, we have some charter counties in Oregon, and we have more, I believe, general law statutory counties, which we are a statutory general law counties. Do you know what the standard is across the state for those general law counties in regards to this provision? Is this a pretty common provision across general law counties in establishing an emergency?
When you say this provision, what?
Well, the provision of, the current code allows the chair of the board is empowered to assume centralized control of and have authority over all departments, division, and offices.
I don't know. I don't know what other general law counties have in terms of emergency declarations, whether it vests that authority with the chair for a time or it's just a governing body. ORS 401 says it's the governing body of the county itself.
Mm-hmm. See, the reason why I don't have a problem with this, and I could see how people could have a problem with it, because it says, oh my gosh, you could be creating a dictatorship in the face of an emergency. But what I see is the standard of delegation, regardless. The chair goes first, and if the chair isn't available, it's the vice chair, and if the vice chair isn't available, it's the next senior member, and if that's not, then it would be me or it would be Mark Schultz. So it would be with whoever in that immediate moment of that emergency to say, okay, we've got to do this. And oh my gosh, you think of the wildfires and emergency operations center being established very fast, evacuation places being established at Clackamas Town Center, at the Seventh-day Adventist site in Gladstone, at the Elk Lodge parking lot. This all happened so fast. What if the chair wasn't available and the vice chair had to centralize control quickly? What if we couldn't get 3 people together fast enough in order to do that work? So I think it's nimble, and I don't have a concern with the language that before Stephen Madcore was adopted in our county code. I think it creates and I think there are checks and balances within it. So I don't have a problem with that now. I did initially. I was having a little bit of angst about it. Stephen, I wanted to ask you another question. I had added the language about not divesting any county official from statutory duties, and I just want to, the reason why I suggested this, and I'm handing out, we emailed it earlier, but I want the commissioners to actually see a list of all the statutory duties, because they're extensive. The duties that are in statute, we are a statutory county, and there are a lot. We have deputy sheriffs, county clerks, the sheriff, which is extensive. The sheriff is heavily statutorily regulated, I must say, probably in my opinion, more than the other elected officials. But our assessor also, those are listed out. I want to thank Kimberly DeSantis and their county counsel's office for confirming these are the duties. It's a lot, and I would never want to do anything that would even give the impression that this board is intending to divest or do a power grab for any other elected official. And that's why I wanted that to be very clear as legislative intent if we proceed today.
And that list is not exhaustive, especially as it pertains to the sheriff. The sheriff has search and rescue duties. The sheriff has jail and custodial obligations as well, which aren't all included under ORS Chapter 204 or 206.
Thank you for that clarification.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Savas?
Yeah, great discussion here. So on 6.03020, which we're talking about now, the spirit, the intent is pretty clear to me when we read what's there existing today. So I'm just going to read it out loud. For the purposes of this ordinance, emergency is defined as any human-made or natural event or circumstance causing or threatening loss of life, injury to persons, the environment or property, human suffering, or financial loss to the extent that extraordinary circumstances must be taken to protect the public health, the safety, and welfare. Mr. Madcore, on Tuesday, I asked you the question, did the May 17th election matter rise to the qualification or reason of an emergency? And your answer was no. I agree with that response. Okay. However, I've already heard stated here today, and I heard Tuesday, and I even heard yesterday, that there's a different opinion about that. So that gives me pause. And the added language, as I read down this, such events shall include, but not limited to, fire, explosion, flood, severe weather, drought, earthquake, volcanic activity, spills of oil or other hazardous substances, disease, blight, infestation, utility or transportation disruptions, civil disturbance. Certainly not, again, the May 17 election, or not meeting a June 13th, or the certification of any election across the state. That has been missed, but it hasn't really been declared an emergency for whatever reasons that are across the state. So when we add lines in the added language here, that again gives me pause. Malfeasance in office. Okay, well, granted, if we can prove that, I think that's what I tried to do on Tuesday, was extrapolate out, is that after it's determined by a court of law, a judge, what constitutes malfeasance in office before one acts, as opposed to a perception or intuition or, someone feeling that there is feeling, not proven, malfeasance in office. Also in that same sentence is willful or wantful neglect of duty of a county public official. Okay, so we need to establish that. What establishes willful or wanton neglect of duty of a public office official? And that includes, public officials include probably the administrator, legal counsel, all of us up here, other electeds, probably department directors as well. They're all public officials, right? So that's a stretch beyond, really, again, the purpose, the intent of the original language that exists today under 6.03020. Added to that, we have the new language that also says failure to meet, which is the change since Tuesday, failure to meet statutory or regulatory requirements. We're widening this intent tremendously. And, I appreciate Commissioner Fisher's, what she just handed out, which is all of those responsibilities. So that's really under all of this. So now that we have pages, frankly, of situations in which if any of these are not really met, then we're widening the door so wide that we have wandered and drifted far from the intent of what that is. So that's where I struggle. I struggle with the fact that what actually declares constitutes really an emergency. If we didn't meet public meetings law, we didn't file a piece of paper, is that really an emergency? And it apparently, it seems to expand that beyond a means of which I'm comfortable.
Thank you for your comment. Thank you for your comment, Commissioner Savas. I'm going to proceed. I'm going to open up the public hearing and take public testimony in person first. We have some cards in here. I'm going to defer to our elected officials. Jenna Morrison from the Sheriff's Office, you're up first. Please come forward. State your name and your position, please.
Chair Smith, Vice Chair Schrader, and Commissioners, I'm Under Sheriff Jenna Morrison with fellow Under Sheriffs Jesse Ashby and Mike Copenhaver. Together, we are here on behalf of Sheriff Brandenburg, who is on vacation with her family. Sheriff Brandenburg, as you are aware, opposes the proposed changes to the Chapter 6.03. Sheriff Brandenburg would like the public to know that she has worked tirelessly over the past few weeks to seek a resolution prior to board action on this issue. I will now read Sheriff Brandenburg's statement. Fellow voter-elected county officials, as the sheriff elected by the people, I oppose the proposed amendment to Chapter 6.03 to expand the definition of a disaster-type emergency to include conduct of an elected official for malfeasance in office, neglect of duty, or failure to meet statutory requirements as determined by the board. This is well beyond the intent and scope of ORS Chapter 401, which the board cites as its authority to make this change. You are well aware that Chapter 401 refers exclusively to emergency management of disasters. You are also aware that our county is not a home rule county. Clackamas County is a general law county, and the authority of the board is expressly stated in law. Specifically, the board is given authority over matters of county concern to the fullest extent allowed by the Constitution and the laws of this state, ORS 203.035, paragraph 1. The board does not have the power to enact ordinances that violate the Oregon Constitution, and in this instance, state laws that govern the removal of an elected for malfeasance or neglect of duty. Under Oregon law, only the voters can either recall an elected official or choose to vote an elected out of office. As the Clackamas County Sheriff, I answer to the people, not to a board of commissioners. State law sets qualifications for my office, and the Oregon Constitution establishes my office. In our county, sheriffs since 1845 have been voted in and out of office by the people. Clackamas County will be the first county in Oregon to attempt to change the will of the people. Under the proposed ordinance, the board will give itself the unprecedented power to determine the fitness of the sheriff and declare an emergency when they become otherwise. And it further empowers one person, the chair, to make the determination and will give the chair centralized control over the sheriff's office. This is nothing short of a power grab and an unlawful expansion of board authority under the guise of good governance, as the chair and vice chair used that term to justify their rationale at the public meeting on August 9th. And equally alarming is the chair and vice chair's comments alluding to their intention to declare an emergency to take control of the elected clerk's office should there be cause to do so in the next election cycle. Both reference the complication the clerk's office experienced after the May primary as justification, despite their own lawyer saying publicly on the record that it was his opinion that those circumstances would not have qualified as an emergency. And when advised by their lawyer that the proposed language would likely be challenged in court, both the chair and vice chair committed themselves to defending their position funded by the taxpayers. This is not good governance. When an elected official fails their elected duty or engages in malfeasance of office, I respect the right of the people to recall or vote their elected official out of office. This process has worked since 1845. This is why I will do everything in my power to protect this process and the rights of the people I have the honor and privilege to serve.
Thank you, Under Sheriff. I believe this sheriff's statement is wrong and in error. Stephen Madco will back this up. Nothing in this emergency declaration says anything about removing an elected official from office. I think that's a stretch of an imagination on our sheriff, and the sheriff wants to proceed with anything that she wants to do. We're standing here ready to discuss with her. Now, the sheriff has been in consultation with Stephen Madcor on this. We have added language, as I read to you earlier. I'm sorry that you did not hear that or understand what that additional language was. Stephen, do you have any comments?
Not unless the board has questions for me.
Commissioner Savas.
Yeah. I think that there was much of the testimony that was just read that does not necessarily concern me with the language here. I think, Chair, that you're talking about is in 6.03040, where it says nothing in this chapter is intended to divest any county official of their statutory duties. However, a substantial amount of the testimony I agree with, frankly, in that it allows someone to declare the fitness of an individual and take over control and operations of. And that is my concern. I stated earlier, what is a validated, either by a court, by a judge, that says, you know, some action or the cause has been truly established versus simply declared. So I support a majority of the testimony given. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll be in disagreement on this issue. Commissioner Fisher, you're up.
Yeah, so I appreciate the statement. I don't know if there's an email and you could send it to me, because I would love to just refer back to it. I think there's a lot in that is very, very persuasive, and my interest has been to counter that concern. When we talk about public safety for our community, it's a major priority, and I think every member of this board, although I don't speak for the board, but I really believe that it's true, value and have as a major priority as identified in, we have this, which we all agreed to for public safety. It's very, very important. So we don't want to get in the way of that. And that is why I wanted to make sure that the statutory duties, especially when it comes to the sheriff, that was carved out with very specific intent. But Stephen Madcore, I have a question for you. So I am very much persuaded to make sure that it's clear, and this is in the Constitution, I can't remember which section, if it's section 17 or section 18 of the Oregon Constitution, which says how an elected official at the county elected official can be removed from office. And it's exactly what Sheriff Brandenburg's statement about a recall, and it prescribes that. I would feel comfortable really stating that this is not intended to remove a public official, which is codified in the Oregon Constitution section, blah, blah. I mean, I was going to say I'm not the lawyer here, but I'm really not the lawyer here. What about that? Just including that in this language to make sure that it's clearly communicated that the duties and the electoral process for the elected officials is not affected by this.
Does not it say that, Stephen Madcore?
I don't mean to correct you publicly, but I don't believe recall of a county official is in the Constitution. I believe it's in state law. But that being said, sometimes less is more. And myself, I don't read recall into this ordinance at all. If you got rid of the existing language, would recall present itself? You are passing judgment on the conduct of a county official with the wanton willful misconduct. It's something that would be a collective board decision. It's not going to be an individual decision. It would have to be a board decision itself. I just caution against adding elections language and recall language to this when it doesn't present itself in the first instance. That's my thought on it.
I would agree with Stephen Madcore's assessment on that, Commissioner Fisher. I think the language should stand, and if there needs to be a test, or if anybody desires to test it, we'll test it.
I think the board's point, and it might be, I understand elected officials are sensitive to it. I think the board's desire here is to be able to respond if a county elected official, the assessor, the treasurer, the sheriff, the clerk, engages in some conduct and ignores some things that this board finds to be of paramount importance for the public health and safety and welfare and to avoid financial loss. You might not always be in alignment with the responses of fellow electeds. And I'm using an example. Let's say love Brian Nava, but let's say your treasurer invested all of our opioid money in Bitcoin or something along those lines. Does the board have any authority to go in and say, stop it, invest in Microsoft instead or something like that? And I say, yes, you do. If you were on the brink of a financial loss of a great extent, is that power vested entirely with one person? And I say that you have the authority in the event of an emergency to avoid financial loss, which would be of great significance to the county, trying to build a courthouse and other expenses. Could you do it? And I say yes. And that is an example. And nowhere in this discussion has it been, you're going to go in there and unseat somebody.
We don't have the authority to unseat any elected official. That can only come by standing for election, recall, voluntary resignment, or death.
Death, disability, no longer eligible, things along those lines, correct.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, I just want to go back to make sure that we're making sure that the broad concern, well, the concerns I have with the broad language here is that it doesn't just say elected officials. It says here under 020, county public official. So I would gather that Under Sheriff Morrison is a county public official, and probably some of her folks in her office are that she has authority over. So it's so broad. Again, we can not just drive a truck, we can drive a battleship through this ordinance when it comes to what constitutes a breach or an emergency. And that's what gives me pause here. It's not well defined.
And you're free to vote any way you want, Commissioner Savas. Commissioner Scholl, you're up.
We're kind of going back to my original question about the differences between operational authority, administrative authority, and coordinating authority. You know, I just heard the term unseat, that nothing here is to unseat an elected official. But if I have the authority or the power granted by this revision to Chapter 6 to override the operational control of an elected official, I have essentially unseated that person and moved them off to the side, to the back of the room, while I take control of your operations. That bothers me. That even if everybody on this current board is someone of unquestionable common sense, judgment, and dedication to a nonpartisan view of the county, in the future, if you had a board that didn't have those qualities, this change to Chapter 6 could become a real tool for people to do wrong, and that's my concern. Common sense is an uncommon virtue in this world, and I'll end my statement with that.
Thank you, Commissioner Scholl. We're going to continue. Thank you very much for coming. We're going to continue with public testimony on this matter. Next up is Shirley Morgan. Come state your name, area of residence, and you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners and staff. Good to see you again. My name is Shirley Morgan from Welch's. And first, I oppose revisions of Emergency Regulation 6.03, suggesting it would be a county emergency if there is malfeasance in office or willful or wanton neglect of duty of a county official. This language issues majority authority to commissioners to not only identify and define wrongdoing and deliberate and unprovoked action, but to investigate and determine criminal malfeasance and wanton neglect in a department of which you have no experience. There are already criminal misconduct laws that use this language and are utilized to deal with these issues. Statute 401 was developed, as Paul stated, Commissioner Savas stated, to minimize injury to persons, the environment, and property, and has identified emergencies as human-made or natural events, such as fire, explosion, floods, civil disturbance, riots, terrorism, and war, as Commissioner Savas read. It was noted these revisions were necessary due to election delays. I support the Commissioner's concerns regarding the delays, but all ballots were counted and turned in on time. This was not an emergency under Chapter 401 definitions, even under the newly revised language. Targeting one elected official's department as the reasons for revising is not only discriminatory, but overreaching to all other elected officials. There are already laws through the Secretary of State's office to deal with election violations. Council, in your August 9th meeting, noted that you currently have the authority to do what you did in assisting the election department, which is what you did. I suggest the Commission use that authority rather than create a divisive and dangerous protocol that will solicit lawsuits and will do little to build trust with our elected officials. These revisions are not only vague, but are misrepresenting, I believe, of the original intention of Chapter 401. Overreaching of an elected official's authority. One-sided, as there is no defined or due process criteria. It lacked transparency. It did not notify or solicit input from any public official in the county. I feel that public policy development should be respectful of the authority given to elected officials by the voters. I would not even consider casting a vote for someone who would see this any other way. Second, I also would like to ask under Regulations and Control 6.03,
Thank you very much for
I can
coming
add this
today.
later.
You can submit that in writing through email if you would like, your testimony today.
I have a copy.
No, to us.
I have a copy for you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah. I'm happy to answer any questions.
You're excused. Thank you, Shirley Morgan, for coming forward. Next up, we are in the public testimony portion. Les Poole, you're up. Please state your name, area of residence, and you have 3 minutes.
Les Poole. I don't know where to begin. I live in the county. I can think of so many questions that I've heard today and that come to mind that haven't really been adequately answered. Commissioner Fisher mentioned she had concerns, but now she's okay with it. Commissioner Savas has repeated a theme that was in my email that I sent on this, and as well as Commissioner Scholl has. And this is an expansion of power. This is legal wordplay, which means it's an invitation to trouble. And it's something that shouldn't be passed because it will no doubt be tested and it will be at our expense. I believe the comparisons to the ice storm, the fires that ravaged the county, tens of thousands of acres, the comparison to those emergencies is specious. Quite frankly, no offense, Chair Smith, I think it's nonsense. I really do. I have a question. Roughly a year ago, it's been longer than that, shortly after taking office, there was a concerted effort to remove Commissioner Scholl based on interpretations of things he had written before he was an elected official. I can assure you that if this was in effect, it would have been used on that man right there. I have absolutely no doubt. I also have absolutely no doubt whatsoever that the language in this is vague. It is giving authority to the board that I don't believe it needs. I don't believe there's been a case made to approve this, even though there seems to be enthusiasm or acceptance from 3 of the board members. And with regard to removing an official, you are definitely in a situation where you would be removing an official temporarily. I agree, recall has nothing to do with this, but you would be in effect, for a short term, recalling an official. And what's most troubling to me, really, beyond what I've said, one of the last things that really just doesn't sit well is that you are elected officials, and I believe that you are exceeding your authority. I believe that it is not.
Thank you very much for
Let me
coming
finish,
forward.
please.
Thank you for coming forward.
It is not appropriate for you to
And
overrule
we're trying to just
elected officials.
We are not removing, and you are in error, sir, and I will correct that and tell the
Thank you for your
cows come
combative
home.
attitude.
We are not removing public officials from this. This is the end of my list of in-person testimony. Tony, do you have anybody on Zoom?
Madam Chair, at this time, I do not have anyone registered to speak. If there is anyone who would like to provide public comment on this hearing, please use the raise hand feature, and I will call on you in the order received. Madam Chair, I do not have any hands raised at this time.
Thank you, Tony. I will now close the public hearing on this and ask if there is any further discussion. Commissioner Scholl.
The impetus for the change to Chapter 6 emergency regulations came when several members of the board were I guess the word would be dissatisfied with the level of their authority to actually take control of the operations of the clerk's office prior to the primary. That's why this change came about. And what actually happened prior to the primary was a very positive thing. That was the county, the board, the county administrator working with an elected official, Clerk Sherry Hall, to actually correct a situation that became a huge manpower requirement. Without the changes to Chapter 6, this board and this county already had the ability to work in harmony with the county clerk to fix the problem. But again, certain members of the board weren't satisfied with the level of their power to interdict and control the operational authority of the clerk. So I just ask you all to remember, that's why this came about. Is some members of the board wanted additional power, and power that I don't think was ever needed. Thank you.
Yes.
Commissioner, I believe, I'm not sure who is next. Fisher, go ahead.
So I'm just trying to thread this needle, because if not for Stephen Madcore, our attorney, and our administrator, Gary Schmidt, really working hard to get the clerk to agree to help, we would have been in a state of emergency. And that's a very serious concern, and I do not want to see this repeat itself. So there's some things that I am looking at. I've been looking at my Constitution, and I appreciate Stephen Madcore telling me that things aren't in the Constitution, but now I understand there is the recall provision in the Constitution, Article 2, Section 18. I would like to clarify that there's nothing in this that is intended to remove an elected official from their position as an intent. And the other piece that I'm really looking at, there's two things I'm thinking about. I'm very persuaded by the testimony today. I'm persuaded by everyone who's talked. I'm persuaded by the sheriff. I'm persuaded. Thank you. Thank you, Les Poole. Thank you. Is it Shirley? Thank you for your thoughts. We don't have checks and balances within local county government. We don't have a 25th Amendment. We don't have any tools. If their inability to meet timelines or statutory requirements, if it puts us into a state of distress, we don't have checks and balances. Now, in looking at this, if the commission decides to do nothing, and if we would have entered into that space where Clerk Hall would have continued to refuse help and the ballots didn't get duplicated, and we would have absolutely missed that timeline, which could have resulted in concerns about election integrity. There was already protesters that could have resulted in civil unrest, trying to get ahead of all of that. We probably could have possibly used the injury to persons, because if people's vote is not counted or taken into consideration, I would say that could be an injury to persons. So maybe we do have authority within this emergency declaration that's current on our books to declare an emergency. Technically, of course, nobody wants to. No governing body wants to do that ever, to declare an emergency. But what really needs to happen here is that there needs to be some recognition that what happened in the May primary is unacceptable, that the delays were unacceptable, that the resistance to receiving assistance was unacceptable, and that there needs to be some check and balance. So I would even be happy to, I'm okay actually removing the sheriff from all of this because there is so much prescribed in statute. The other elected officials, we have a, what's it called? I'm looking to Jenna out in the audience. It's the Standards and Practices, DPSST, which stands for something standard and practice, which is heavily regulated. Our sheriff doesn't have the ability to not do her job, or she's in trouble with the regulatory agency that oversees our public safety system. So there's a few things I would just throw out there. Making sure the legislative intent says that we're not, nothing in this is intended to remove an elected official. We could also sunset this come December 31st, have further discussions. I think it's important to be collaborative with our other elected officials, or we could remove the sheriff from this altogether. Those are my three sort of suggestions open for discussion.
I only heard two.
Sunset, December 31st, add that it's not the intent to remove any elected official or potentially removing the sheriff from this altogether since there's so many other avenues for oversight.
I believe that's stated, Commissioner Fisher. It's already stated in the language. Okay. Commissioner Savas, you're up.
Yeah, it's really becoming more clear at this moment and throughout this week that this is all about the elections situation and the clerk, unfortunately, as opposed to making policy. These are the three constitutional positions are the elected sheriff, the elected clerk, and the elected treasurer. These are constitutional positions. I, as stated yesterday, said before, I'm not happy about what happened on May 17th. I'm not happy about the delays that were led. I appreciate all the staff and everyone in the elections office here, the administrators' work, legal count, all of us. We did a lot of work. It was a team effort, and I appreciate that more than you know, that we all came together to make this happen and get the election certified on time. We did that. I think we got to congratulate ourselves that we accomplished that. But again, the elections office itself is a unique one because it is really about our right to elect people or not. It's about the sanctity of that position. And I think that interference, because a county commissioner or the county commission is defined as a political subdivision of the state. That's our definition, political, but not the elections office and not any part of the elections are considered political subdivisions of the state. It's a function of the state. It's a function of our Constitution. And I talked, recently about the balance of power of our three branches of our federal government and citing that federal elections are now separate from all three branches now today, as of about 50 years ago, to, again, provide that independence and that autonomy without interference. I am very concerned about the language here today. It demonstrates that there is potentially something forthcoming here between now and the end of the year. I don't know what that is. I'm not privy to what that is, but it seems to me that the way that the remedy, as I see it, has been explained to me, and I mentioned this yesterday as well, is that the Secretary of State or the election clerks in this state are subordinate to the Secretary of State. If the Secretary of State deems there's a problem, I believe there's some remedies. Whether someone's on their deathbed or there's a fatality or there's some kind of an emergency, there's an action. When the Secretary of State, Mr. Richardson, passed away, the governor stepped in and filled that position. I mean, there are things and situations where those vacancies or those crises are addressed. And I believe that today that's in play. So I am not concerned about a genuine emergency. I hear, again, I'm going to say it again, I hear a couple of my colleagues saying that it was an emergency, and I hear our legal counsel saying it was not an emergency. That's a conflict that's not resolved in this language, and it needs to be resolved. Because we are reading into something, again, that wide, we're broadening the language here. I stated yesterday, and I say this again, and I agree, I appreciate my colleagues agreeing to proceed with an investigation or a review or after-action review or an assessment of the May 17th initiative, or not initiative, but the issue that took place there, and see what we can do to streamline, fix, whether it's at the state level or it's at the local level or both, what we can do to learn from that. And I think we have a responsibility to learn from that incident and make any corrections or adjustments that again, give the people the trust in elections and the role of making sure they go as smoothly as possible with all the integrity it rightfully deserves. So, but we're taking action without that. We don't have that information. We don't have really, frankly, that independent review of what really went wrong, which we talked about at length yesterday. Sure, we had a printer error in the private sector, a printer error. We had incidences and delays and so forth, probably not really assessing how many ballots were damaged, not really truly assessing at the time what the voter turnout would be, how many ballots would have to be duplicated. We learned from that. I'm not saying it went well. I'm not saying it's impacted us all. But nonetheless, frankly, I think the results of that review that we had agreed to do yesterday will help guide future policy or adjustments, whether it's the Secretary of State in the manual or whether it's here in the elections clerk's office, whatever those remedies are, to broaden this, to take over that office without that expertise, or have an assignment of who takes over those offices or that function is not clear. And I'm just concerned that this, again, is overreach.
Thank you again, Commissioner Savas. Commissioner Scholl.
Yes. It was just suggested a few minutes ago that the Sheriff's Department be relieved of any effect from this change to Chapter 6, while other elected officials would be subjected to it. And as I recall, the authority vested in the electorate of the people of this county who elect their officials don't say that one elected official's job is more important than another one. I don't see how we could even begin to say, on one hand, that the changes to Chapter 6 are viable and needed, and then say, well, maybe we'll just eliminate a certain elected official from the effects of that chapter. I'm lost on that one. Thank you.
Okay. We've had ample discussion on this. Commissioner Fisher, you're in the queue.
Yeah, so great. This is such a great discussion. So I kind of go back and forth, and I really wanted in the intent, I want like a preamble that says, whereas this, whereas that, whereas, and then we could have our ordinance, but that's not the way the county code works. And my wonderful attorney keeps reminding me through email, is like, well, Sonia, why would you want to add that, the part about the Constitution? It just confuses everything. And then it's like, dang it, you know what? He's right again. And I'm so happy that we have good legal counsel. Did you just wink at me, Stephen Madcore?
It was a twitch, I'm sorry.
That was a twitch.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. Thank you for that. Yeah, I've thought about this a lot. I think we need some checks and balances. I'm okay moving forward with this as written after receiving advice of counsel, but I would also, if my other colleagues would like to have it sunset at the end of the year or it is maybe not quite at the end of the year because we have a recess right at the end of the year, so we could engage in further discussions. But I think we need something in place. We do not have any checks and balances in local government. We don't have a 25th Amendment. We just don't have it. So that's what concerns me and what keeps me up at night. But I want to engage more deeply. This is important, and we are not a charter county. But maybe this is a discussion that says, well, maybe we need to get a commission and go through a charter and go through all of that and change our governance. I kind of don't think so. I think what has been created in general law should allow for us to define ourselves to the greatest extent possible, not in violation of state or constitutional law, as ORS 401, is that right, Stephen Madcore? Okay, good. I'm learning my statutes, as that states. So that's where I am right now, but happy if any of my colleagues would like to amend.
We
sunset.
need to call on Commissioner Schrader.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Is that correct, Tony?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay. Commissioner Schrader, you're up.
I just wanted to let all of you know that I have struggled with this as well. This, however, has been a consistent problem since I have been a commissioner. And it has constantly put us in an extremely bad spot because elections are sacrosanct. And through the years, I'll be honest, it's been very rare that we have not had an election problem one way or the other. This particular time has been the worst. And whatever else you may think about this ordinance, I will remind everyone that we had to intervene. If we had not intervened into the process, those ballots would not have been counted on time and they would not have been certified. And I think that is pretty evident. And I think under those circumstances, we have to have an opportunity to take some action. I am aware that people think this power can be abused, but I will remind you that this isn't the authority of one commissioner. All of us have to be involved when an emergency is called. So I would be willing to support this today.
Commissioner Schrader, I'll entertain a motion from you.
I move we move forward with the ordinance as written.
Second.
Commissioner Schrader has moved we approve ordinance 06-2022, an ordinance amending Clackamas County Code Chapter 6.03, Emergency Regulations, and declaring an emergency. Commissioner Fisher has seconded the motion. Commissioner Fisher?
Yeah, I just want to, I know there's talk that Commissioner Savas was thinking of recusing himself, and there could be talk of potential conflicts because I'm on the ballot in November. I want to assure everyone there is I cannot imagine there being any pecuniary, which is a financial gain for me in this vote today, but because there is a potential perception of a conflict, I'm going to declare that now.
Thank you, Commissioner Fisher. Commissioner Savas, you're up.
Yeah, well, thank you. Now that I hear about this sunset and I hear, direct language about the clerk apparently, and really that's very clear today at this moment more than ever, that this is what it's about. And I am concerned. I am also on the ballot, as is Commissioner Fisher and other folks. But the other fundamental thing that's wrong with this is that the board, us, will seize control potentially of whether it's this election or a future election, seize control of election in which we're on the ballot. And I think that's problematic. Frankly, the language ought to be here, an assignment of that responsibility to someone identified, independent, whatnot, that separates us. But no, this gives the chair and the Board of County Commissioners direct authority to overtake the elections. I have a problem with that.
Okay, commissioners, we've all said much comment, and we keep repeating ourselves. So with that in mind, Tony, I'm going to call for a vote.
Commissioner Fisher,
Aye.
Commissioner Schull,
No.
Commissioner Savas,
No.
Commissioner Schrader,
Aye.
Chair Smith.
Aye, motion passes 3-2. Thank you very much, commissioners. Gary, what's next?
Point of order, Chair. You'll want to direct the clerk to read it by title only, please.
Clerk, would you please read the ordinance by title only?
Ordinance number 062022, an ordinance amending Clackamas County Code, Chapter 6.03, Emergency Regulations, and declaring an emergency.
Thank you very much for that.
Chair, I have a procedural question. Mr. Madcore, when does this take effect?
Declared emergency takes effect immediately upon signature.
I thought it required a unanimous vote to declare.
That's only if you're doing it in one reading.
Okay.
Gary, what's next?
All right, next is the consent agenda. Tony, would you please read the consent agenda?
Consent agenda, elected officials, item 1, approval of August 4th, 2022 meeting minutes for the Board of County Commissioners. Item 2, approval of an intergovernmental agreement with Clackamas County Fairgrounds and Event Center for law enforcement services at the Clackamas County Fair. Contract value estimated at $22,500 for 1 week. Funding is through reimbursement by Clackamas County Fairgrounds and Event Center. No county general funds are involved. This is for the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office. Item 3, approval of a local subrecipient grant agreement with the Children's Center of Clackamas County to fund medical diagnosis, treatment recommendation services, and law enforcement information sharing for child abuse victims. Grant value is $480,500 for 1 year. Funding is through the Oregon Child Abuse Multidisciplinary Intervention Program. No county general funds are involved. This is for the District Attorney's Office. Council, item 1, approval of a board order approving an intergovernmental agreement with the state of Oregon for Phase 2 funding of the county courthouse. Agreement value is $189 million. Funding is 50% through Oregon Capital Construction Improvement Funds and 50% through budgeted county general funds. County Administration, item 1, approval of a subrecipient grant agreement with Ant Farm to fund basic goods and services to qualifying households impacted by COVID-19. Agreement value is $2 million. Funding is through county ARPA funds allocated to funding basic needs through nonprofits. No county general funds are involved. Transportation and Development, item 1, approval of a public improvement contract with A Affordable Septic Service, LLC for the Eagle Fern and Barton Park Septic Replacement Project. Contract value is $209,600. Funding is through county ARPA lost revenue funds allocated to Transportation and Development. No county general funds are involved. Finance, item 1, approval of an amendment increasing reimbursement rate of an infrastructure contract with the Oregon Department of Emergency Management for the 2021 ice storm. Amendment value is $425,000. Contract value is now approximately $2,490,000. Funding is through Federal Emergency Management Agency grant funds. No county general funds are involved. Item 2, approval of a public improvement contract with Roof Toppers Incorporated for the Stokes Building membrane re-roof and infill project. Contract value is $236,275. Funding is through budgeted county general funds. Health, Housing, and Human Services, item 1, approval of an amendment increasing funding and extending the duration of a contract with Ride Connection Incorporated to provide dedicated medical rides to eligible individuals. Amendment value is $87,909. Contract value now not to exceed $173,258 for 2 years. Funding is through statewide transportation improvement funds. No county general funds are involved. Item 2, approval of an amendment increasing funding and extending duration of a contract with Ride Connection Incorporated to provide dedicated dialysis rides to eligible individuals. Amendment value is $85,850. Contract now not to exceed $169,198 for 2 years. Funding is through statewide transportation improvement funds. No county general funds are involved. Item 3, approval of an amendment increasing funding and extending the duration of a contract with Ride Connection Incorporated for reimbursement of vehicle preventative maintenance expenses. Amendment value is $51,800. Contract value now not to exceed $111,500 for 2 years. Funding is through the Federal Transit Administration. No county general funds are involved. Item 4, approval of a local subrecipient grant agreement with Clackamas Service Center for purchasing culturally preferred food items for distribution to individuals experiencing food insecurity. Grant value not to exceed $75,000 for 18 months. Funding is through Public Health Restricted Fund Balance. No county general funds are involved. Item 5, approval of a local subrecipient grant agreement with the Immigrant and Refugee Community Organization to provide evidence-based parenting education classes in Russian and Vietnamese. Grant value not to exceed $20,000. Funding is through Oregon State University grant funds. No county general funds are involved. Item 6, approval to apply for funding opportunity, Workforce Ready Grants Round 1, building capacity for workforce programs to fund technology, software, and consulting services to improve capacity of the county's workforce unit. Requested grant amount is $350,000. Funding is through the Oregon Higher Education Coordinating Commission. No county general funds are involved. Item 7, approval of change order number 11 for various required and recommended changes to the Santee Health Center project with Banlund Construction, LLC. Change order value is $54,876.25. Contract value is now $5,267,047.39. Funding through Health Centers Division Fund Balance. No county general funds are involved. Madam Chair, that concludes the list.
Thank you very much. Does any commissioner wish to pull anything from this consent agenda? I will move for approval.
I move for approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
Commissioner Scholl has moved for approval of the consent agenda, and Commissioner Schrader has seconded that motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Tony, please call the poll.
Commissioner Fisher.
Aye.
Commissioner Scholl.
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader.
Aye.
Commissioner Savas.
Aye.
Chair Smith.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Gary, what's next?
If you would please convene as a Development Agency Board, Chair.
I will now recess as the Board of County Commissioners and convene as the Development Agency Board. Tony.
Yes, this is the consent agenda for the Development Agency. Tony, would you please read the consent agenda?
Development Agency Consent Agenda, 1 item, approval of permanent right-of-way easements for road purposes for the Fuller Road Station project. No fiscal impact, no county general funds are involved.
Thank you. Does any commissioner wish to remove any item? I will entertain a motion.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Commissioner Savas has moved to approval of the consent agenda. Commissioner Fisher has seconded that. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Tony, please call the poll.
Commissioner Fisher.
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader.
Aye.
Commissioner Savas.
Aye.
Commissioner Scholl.
Aye.
Chair Smith.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. I will now adjourn as Development Agency Board and convene as the Service District Number 5 Board.
Next is the consent agenda for Service District Number 5 Lighting District. Tony, would you please read the consent agenda?
Service District Number 5 Consent Agenda, 1 item, approval of a resolution certifying an assessment role for the street light service in Clackamas County Service District Number 5 for fiscal year 2022-2023. Assessment value is $2,250,099.49, subject to the general government limitation. Funding is through assessments on properties annexed to the service district. No county general funds are involved.
Does any commissioner wish to remove an item? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Move for approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
Second.
Commissioner Savas has moved for approval, and Commissioner Fisher has seconded that motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Tony, would you please call the poll?
Commissioner Fisher.
Aye.
Commissioner Savas.
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader.
Aye.
Commissioner Scholl.
Aye.
Chair Smith.
Aye, motion passes 5-0. I will now adjourn as Service District Number 5 Board and convene as the Water Environment Services Board.
Next is the consent agenda for Water Environment Services. Tony, would you please read the consent agenda?
Water Environment Services, 5 items. Item 1, approval of an intergovernmental agreement with Clackamas County College, Clackamas Community College for watershed health education services. Agreement value is $112,500 over 3 years. Funding through West Surface Water Operating Funds. No county general funds are involved. Item 2, approval of a grant application to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's Transformational Habitat Restoration and Coastal Resilience Grant Program for construction of the Three Creeks Floodplain Enhancement Project. Grant value is $3,800,000. No county general funds are involved. Item 3, approval of a construction contract with R.L. Reimers Company for the Pump Station Rehabilitation and Upgrades Group 1 project. Contract value is $1,137,500. Funding is through Water Environment Services Capital Funds. No county general funds are involved. Item 4, approval of a progressive design build contract with Mitchell's Trenchless for the Tri-City Water Resource Recovery Facility Outfall Project. Contract value is $1,704,547. Funding is through Water Environment Services Capital Funds. No county general funds are involved. Item 5, approval of a personal services contract with Jacobs Engineering Incorporated for the hydraulic model update project. Contract value is $299,636. Funding is through Water Environment Services Capital Funds. No county general funds are involved. Madam Chair, that concludes the list.
Thank you very much. Does any commissioner wish to remove any item from this consent agenda? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I move for approval of the Water Environment Services consent agenda.
Second.
Commissioner Schull has moved for approval of the Water Environment Services consent agenda. Commissioner Schrader has seconded that. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Tony, please take the poll.
Commissioner Schrader,
Aye.
Commissioner Schull,
Aye.
Commissioner Fisher,
Aye.
Commissioner Savas,
Aye.
Chair Smith.
Aye, motion passes 5-0. I will now adjourn as a Water Environment Services Board and reconvene as a Board of County Commissioners. Thank you, Commissioners. Up next is public communication. This portion of the agenda shall be limited to items of county business which are properly the object of board consideration and should be nonpartisan in nature, as the BCC is a nonpartisan governing body under Oregon Revised Statutes and County Code. Testimony is limited to 3 minutes. Comments shall be respectful and courteous to all. As a reminder, you can email submissions for public communication at bcc@clackamas.us, and these will be accepted as part of the public record. However, we will not be reading them at the business meeting due to time constraints. I will now open the meeting for public testimony, and I will take in-person testimony first. Thank you very much. I have 3 cards here. Wrong pile, excuse me. And I have 3 cards in this pile as well. Les Poole, you're up first.
Yeah, Les Poole. I appreciate the opportunity to speak twice today, and I'll be brief. While I'm disappointed in some of what I heard and just experienced, now is not the time to talk about that. A couple of issues, one of them very positive, and that is the commissioning of the USS Oregon. I thought that was a nice presentation, a great award. And being a history buff, the original Oregon was built, I believe, in the 1880s, and when the Maine was blown up in Havana Harbor, the Oregon had to make a trip to Cuba. They went all the way around South America and arrived, and we ended up with the Spanish-American War and you know how that all went. The reason I bring it up is that that event was a catalyst for construction of the Panama Canal. A lot of folks don't know that. And the original Oregon was decommissioned and scrapped for World War II. We needed metal, and she was a big, massive ship. And so the Oregon was dismantled. But the mast was preserved, and it's downtown in Portland at Waterfront Park, for those that don't know what that shipmast is. That's from the Oregon. The other thing I want to talk about is my comments and the discussion last week on a topic that is becoming increasingly troubling and has been controversial from day one, and that is tolling. I encourage folks to watch 10 minutes into last week's meeting where I, Paul Edgar, and I believe Commissioner Savas and Scholl, I can't remember exactly, but there was a good 7 or 8, 10 minutes of discussion there about the issue. And I want to reiterate that currently tolling is approved by the federal government if you're building capacity. If we want to add lanes to 205 and pay for it with tolling, ODOT has the authority to do that. But beyond that, what is being planned is congestion pricing, which is tolling or charging us to use existing lanes, charging more during peak traffic with the idea we're going to reduce congestion. And of course, where will all that congestion go but into the neighborhoods, in neighborhood streets? In the case of Clackamas County, the test case for this is I-205. Ultimately, ODOT's seeking approval in 2 years, after 2 years of running the tolling, for permanency. And currently, they do not have that authority, so we're the test case. And I just encourage the board and folks to stay informed on this because it's not going well. Thank you as always.
Thank you very much. Up next is Grover Jeffrey Bornfeld. Please come forward. Yes, and Jan Carruthers may come with you as well. That's okay. Who wants to go first today?
Ladies.
Jan Carruthers, would you please state your name, your area of residence, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Jan Carruthers, 4308 Southeast Boardman, and in Jennings Lodge. And thank you very much. We are 31-year residents of this community. And professionally, I'm a speaker, trainer, and facilitator working with cities and counties and other public agencies. Before that, I was a corporate recruiter. The reason I bring that up is because you could laughingly call me a power user in libraries. I'm in libraries 3 times a week. I use not only our branches, lots of them, also Multnomah County. I love libraries, and I believe they are the heart of a community. There are so many important functions of a library, and if you have been in the Oak Grove or Gladstone Library lately, you will be startled at the limited facilities in each one of them, and they've been limited for all these years. We have, as a community, had our hopes up over and over and over again over the years where there was a slight opening, a possibility, a promise the county would make up for money that is beyond the district taxes that we pay. And I realize circumstances and circumstances. However, we are facing another opportunity here with ARPA money. And I believe there's a possibility of spending some of that money, designating some of that money to Oak Lodge and Gladstone and moving these projects forward. I am concerned. Frankly, it's a little bit of a doubting community, because they've had their hopes dashed many times. The need is real. The facilities are incredibly outdated, insufficient. They do not serve all the community, the demographics, the international needs, the seniors, the youth, families. We do not serve them. Students, there's not enough place. You can't even go in and sit down and read in our library. There's one table. There's one table in Gladstone. It does not serve the modern needs of a modern library. We have a spectacular staff. They're very talented. Most of their talents are going unused because of what could be in a library and aren't. So I follow you guys, and I appreciate that you are our city, our library city. You're the ones. So here's the thing. I know that you've put a hold on the construction of Oak Lodge and Gladstone because of construction costs. I appreciate that, a smart move. And we have one-time ARPA money, and I really want to see some of that money, a significant amount of that money, go to those two libraries to get that off the ground. Frankly, it's a doubting community.
Thank you
It's
very
worried.
much. Sure.
You bet. You're welcome.
Jan, thank you very much. Grover, you're up.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioners, staff, and to the residents. I'm Grover Jeffrey Bornefeld, and I live in Jennings Lodge for the last 30-plus years. And I have opted in my retirement years to be able to get involved because my commitment is to generate community participation. It is the basis that our country is built on, and unfortunately, people get too busy and they don't participate, so they need to hear about it. So that's what I'm doing. I'm serving currently as the chair of the District Advisory Committee for NCPRD. I'm also the vice chair of the Library Advisory Board for Clackamas County, which includes the Oak Lodge Library and the Gladstone Library as a combined board. I'm also an original member of the Concord Property Library Planning Task Force that's been operating for on again, off again for 4 years. And I'm also a longtime member of the Jennings Lodge Community Planning Organization. So I do my best to get other people to participate, and I appreciate you always being good listeners. But I also really appreciate just listening to what we talked about today and other times, because I listen to a lot of your meetings even if I don't come. You have a vast amount of things that you have to deal with and have to make choices about. So I appreciate that. And what I appreciate is we have these structures of having resident boards to do the research, to dig in 4 years on one, et cetera, to be able to provide you with advice from those bodies. And that's what I appreciate, our opportunity to assist you so you don't have to be the full-on expert on every topic. So given that, I do want you to know that last evening, the District Advisory Committee met, and we did in fact concur with the motion that was the planning task force had come up with about the alignment for the library on the Concord site. So the parks is focusing on parks and the Concord building as a community cultural center, and the task force is the primary focus to represent the library portion of that. So we concurred with the task force placement in the approximate area next to the building, and more to come. And thank you for that, and thank you for then allowing this to open up the process to continue the planning, so we have a chance to be able to utilize the state ARPA money, the federal ARPA money, et cetera, with its relevant deadlines. So all that being said, I don't have much more time. I just want to speak to the fact that the settlement agreement does call for, and we have whatever binding in that we're going to have one library and 2 branches as the condition of that settlement agreement. And the county has opted to be the library city for Oak Lodge. So
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You have been very articulate in stating your concerns about this many, many times. Thank you for coming again today, both of you.
I'll be happy to be back.
Yes, and Tony, do we have anybody online or Zoom who wishes to comment?
Madam Chair, at this time, I do not have anyone registered to speak. If there is anyone who would like to provide public comment, please use the raise hand feature, and I will call on you in the order received. Madam Chair, I do not have any hands raised at this time.
Thank you. I will now close the public communication portion of this meeting, and we will move on. Gary, what's our next item?
Thank you, Chair. Next is County Administrator update. I'd like to use my time to recognize our staff and the great programs our county does. Today, Clackamas Water and Environment Services, or WES, recently partnered with the Clackamas Academy of Industrial Sciences to provide students with a real-world, hands-on learning experience. Biotechnology students toured our Tri-City plant to gather data and test hypotheses and then create posters of findings for their classmates. This program is just the latest educational collaboration between WES and the Academy. More than just educational opportunities, projects like these help grow our future workforce and allow students to learn how West protects public health and the environment. Thank you to our West staff for this program. Next, Clackamas County Weatherization Services, a division of Health, Housing, and Human Services, recently received a very nice letter from a client, which I'll read in a moment. Our Weatherization Services division helps low-income individuals and families increase the energy efficiency of their homes, reduce energy costs, and improve the comfort, health, and safety of their living environment. So a client, Kathleen, wrote, "To all of you incredible men and women at Clackamas County Weatherization, I needed to write a letter to better describe in more detail how life-changing this has been for me. Without a doubt, every single individual who came to help and advise me at my home this year has been kind, professional, and incredibly well-versed. I already can feel the difference in my home. I just received my first full month energy bill, and it dropped by over 70%. I have kept my temperature at 74 degrees during this heat wave, and I'm so thankful for this blessing. My absolute best to this program, and I truly want to thank you for this blessing in my life." That's a very nice note from Kathleen, and thank you to our weatherization team. That is my update today. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you very much, Gary. Now we will continue with Commissioner Communication. We have a list of order. Commissioner Scholl, you're up.
Yes, thank you, Chair Smith. Good morning, Clackamas County. First of all, on a very happy note, I would like to thank Stephen Bates and the members of the Boring Oregon Foundation for the Boring and Dull Day event we had on the 9th of August. What a great time it was. You know, even in boring, even disasters are boring. What happened was the free ice cream that all the children were so excited to receive melted when the freezer malfunctioned, and so the kids had milkshakes. But that's as bad as disasters get in boring. So thank you again to Mr. Stephen Bates and the members of the Boring Oregon Foundation for a great time. Tomorrow afternoon, I'll be with the Forest Trust Land Advisory Committee for a meeting. That'll be on Zoom. And I would like to call to the attention of people in the county, especially you who are over 65 years old. Senators Bill Kennemer, Kim Thatcher, and Representatives Cedric Hayden and Rachel Moore Green have launched the ballot measure initiative Petition 10, asking voters to sign a petition for a constitutional amendment which would provide a freeze on property taxes of a primary residence in the tax year in which a senior homeowner reaches 65. I'd like people to look into that, read up on it, and see what you think. If you're interested, sign that petition. On the Portland Water Bureau treatment plant, I'll be at a meeting on 20 August with the Cottrell CPO to hear public comments on the new filtration plant that Portland Water Bureau plans to be built on exclusive farmland in the Cottrell area. People who are interested, contact the Cottrell CPO. Again, that's 20 August. And just as a note, when that plant goes in, Sandy residents and the residents of the Cottrell area will probably see a 450% increase in their cost of water. Also, for private woodland owners, August 24th at 8 o'clock, the Oregon Board of Forestry will meet to discuss the Private Forest Accord. Please join them on the YouTube channel under Oregon Board of Forestry or at the Forestry Information at ODF website. Next Tuesday morning is the start of the Clackamas County Fair. I hope everybody can be there. There's going to be a rodeo every evening, the 16th to the 20th. It's going to be a great time. And also, once again, you've heard Mr. Poole speak about tolling. I recommend that every resident of the county contact your state rep and your state senator. Find out what's going on with tolling. And the question now is there, if the state legislature was willing, is there money in Salem now to build what we need to have built on I-205 without tolling? You can find out the answer to that question if you contact your state reps and see what they have to say about it. Thank you, Clackamas County, and have a nice afternoon.
Thank you, Commissioner Scholl. You know, you raised the issue about property taxes for our seniors, and that has been a recurring theme even when I was a commissioner last time. And I do think it bears a look-see. And, you know, maybe we want to discuss it at a policy session. We've had many requests from seniors to do something about the escalating property taxes, of which we don't raise them. We've never raised property taxes yet, but other forces out there have certainly affected the continued increase of property taxes, and especially burdensome on people who are retirement ages, on fixed income, who are not in the workforce. And I think that's a really important topic that you brought up. Thank you for that. Commissioner Savas, you're up next.
Yeah, thank you. Well, yesterday we had our annual employee picnic, and I know we've had a break from that as a result of COVID, but it was really nice to be outside on a relatively nice weather day. It wasn't too hot, wasn't too cold, and be able to mingle with our employees, our, you know, a lot hardworking, dedicated, skilled employees that are, you know, giving their all to serve the citizens of this county. So I just want to just say a shout out to everyone involved, and certainly enjoy the conversations. This week, and probably especially yesterday and this morning, I kept reminiscing about my role at AOC on the governance committee. And it's one of the multiple committees that, as county commissioners, we participate in. And often in the early morning hours, driving after you get to Salem, we would go up in the offices there and form as a governance committee and go over pending legislation that was designed to either remedy a problem or remedy problematic legislation. And you know, whether it's tolling or whatever it may be, you know, we in government unfortunately sometimes create problems that we have to come back and fix, and we have to come back and fix. And there's just repeated. And when you think about all the hundreds and thousands, or thousands of bills every year that change the laws and really don't sometimes factor in the consequences. You know, AOC, the Association of Oregon Counties, does their best to advocate as best they can to try and keep up with all these bills, to take a position to remedy some of those problems. And some of those problems turn out to be unfunded mandates or underfunded mandates in which your local governments are responsible to pick up that, you know, that burden. And perhaps it's great for the budgeting for the state that frees them up of some of their expenses, but you know, I think there needs to be a principle to acknowledge that if you're going to create a law or create a solution or create something, that there's a financial means to support that, you know, and you take responsibility for providing that, as opposed to against passing that on to others. And that's what we have. It's like a ping pong game. The ball gets batted back, or the responsibility gets batted back from side to side, and the responsibility and the mission, well intended, is not often accomplished because there's really a lack of funding or a lack of understanding, or the lack of understanding of the consequences. And today, I'm sure for our actions today that public dollars will be spent, unfortunately and unnecessarily, to remedy a problem that was created today. That's what I have for today, Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Schrader? Thank you, Commissioner Savas. Commissioner Schrader, you're up next.
Well, hello, everyone. I'm going to ask you to do a favor for me, and that is to have a wonderful time at the Clackamas County Fair that's coming up next week. I started going to the fair in 1982. I used to show my honey, and I had won blue ribbons when I was a beekeeper at the time. And I have fond memories of the parade on Tuesdays, where I was able to bring my children in, and the first thing they always headed for were the rides. and the carnival. Second place, I always toted them to, because it was my most fun place to go, was the livestock barn. And I want somebody to kiss a llama for me. If you could. I hope somebody visits my favorite exhibit with the mama pig and all the piglets, which has to be one of my favorites. I hope that you have an opportunity to watch all our future Farmer of America's youngsters who are going to be showing their sheep, their cattle, their milk cows, their rabbits, their various poultry, because it's the most fun part of the fair. I know that this year we have a new fair director, and I think it's going to be a marvelous opportunity. And I know that I always tell people, don't miss the rodeo, because next year I'm hopeful my family will be in town with me rather than me being in town with them. And the American rodeo with the cowboys and everything else that happens is unique to our Western philosophy and who we are as a people. And I am hopeful that my whole family will be with me next year for my 70th birthday. I have been going to the county fair since before I was 50 years old. And so think of me when you're there. I hope you all get a chance to give ice cream to the seniors. I don't think they do a pretty baby contest anymore, but that was one of my favorite things to do at the time. So enjoy, and just let me say it's a pleasure working with all of you. And I am so grateful to the modern technology that we have today that allows us to participate as commissioners from all over the world. So have a great time, colleagues. I'll be thinking of you, and I will be back at the fair with bells on next year with my grandchildren.
Thank you, Commissioner Schrader. Have a good time. Commissioner Fisher, you're up.
Oh my gosh, Commissioner Schrader bringing up the, kiss a llama. So my first fair, I was right next to the llama. I got a great picture of me right next to a llama, but oh my goodness, right after that, some spitting occurred, and I almost was privy to that. And so I will let you know, Commissioner Schrader, I, for one, have learned my lesson and dodged a spitting llama at one point in my life, so I will not kiss a llama at this fair. But I am looking very forward to the fair as well, and we will be able to be part of the parade and the opening ceremonies next week. I can't believe how quickly this year has gone by. Want to let my commissioners know, as part of my work on Association of Oregon Counties, the Steering Committee on Health and Human Services met yesterday. We had a very robust conversation. We had the Oregon Health Authority showed up for the meeting, and that was Director Pat Allen and the I don't know if he calls him, he is the director, the administrator for the Mental Health and Addictions Division of the Oregon Health Authority. And they got some tough questions. And we know at the local level, we're dealing with the implementation of Measure 110, and which legalized drugs. And at the same time that those drugs were legalized, the effort to get resources into the community for substance use disorder treatment has been delayed and delayed and delayed. And it's frustrating. It's really frustrating when we see the needs in our community, and not only with Measure 110, but also with support for housing. So we got the legislature authorized for people with very significant mental health challenges, secured residential treatment funding for that, and that also took a significant delay. So we're dealing with that at the local level, and it's frustrating, but you know what? They were transparent and acknowledged the delays. And I felt like that was the good start to the repair of a lot of frustration, at least from our county subcommittee with the state, which I think is very positive. I also want to alert the board, this isn't an issue that's new to us, we've discussed it, but I want to put you in the queue. The Association of Oregon Counties is working very vast and broad to get support for a concept which is going to be part of this next legislative session. And this has started with Eugene, with Alex Kyler, is that how we say his name, Stephen? The County Council of Eugene, did I say that right? I'm not sure. Okay. Well, their county council is getting support letter to make sure that if there is harm that stems from someone who is in the community who is considered someone that needs to be restored for competency to participate in their trial, if there is harm that's done to the community, then it is the state that is liable for that and not the counties. So we are working hard to protect our bottom line at the county level, fighting for what we know we can't help people if we don't have the resources. And it goes back to those unfunded mandates that we all talk about. So we're working on that. I'm sure that our legislative affairs team will come to us at some point with all the things that we will be supporting, and that will be one of those efforts that we've actually been working on for couple years now. So those are my updates, and I am looking forward to seeing everyone on Tuesday again.
Thank you, Commissioner Fisher. I understand you have to leave.
Yeah, but...
Okay, thank you very much. We're almost concluded. Yes, we had an employee picnic this week, and a huge amount of employees came. I would bet almost all county employees came. I think they were just busting their buttons to get out of their offices and celebrate post-COVID. We had a dunk tank of our county directors, department directors, which was well attended, as you can imagine. A time to dunk your boss without, and then you can run. And then we played cornhole, and Emily and I went past the first round, and then we got whacked hard by some folks in the Department of Transportation Bridge Department. But it was a lot of fun. I toured Tri-City facility through Water Environment Services this week, and the technology has increased over time. We used to have membrane technology to clean all the waste, and then we went to the filtration technology, and some of that's still in use, but now they use UV lights to clean the wastewater. And I find that just really fascinating, and it's much smaller. You don't need a whole huge area to do it like we used to, and the technology used in some of our most basic needs is really, I find fascinating. As many have said, next week is Fair Week. Tuesday's meetings will be canceled because this board is walking in the Kiwanis Kitties Parade starting at 10 a.m. We will end at the fairgrounds, and then we will be present for the opening ceremonies. All the commissioners will be there. We'll kick off the fair and have a great time. I hope you folks get an opportunity to visit our fair. I know the fair board is really gearing up. They're doing wonderful things. Food vendor booths sold out months ago. We're having cowboys come in to do the rodeo, like Commissioner Schrader said, and I expect it's going to be one of the most well-attended fairs we've seen in a long time. Seeing no business before this Board of County Commissioners, we are adjourned.